Okay, well, that was certainly a One Piece chapter. Yeah, I've been around for a while. I've read my share of One Piece chapters, and let me tell you, that chapter right there, chapter 1043, that was certainly a One Piece chapter. A lot of people have been saying, like, this is going to be one of the big ones. This is going to be a chapter that we're going to remember after One Piece has concluded. We're going to look back, like 10, 20 years after One Piece ends. So, like, easily in the 31st century. We're going to look back and we're going to see, like, all the landmark chapters of the story. And this is going to be one of them, okay? Certainly going to be one of those chapter numbers that has been, like, seared into my brain. Like, there's a few of them that I just remember off the cuff. Like, I remember chapter 903 was the chapter where Luffy's new bounty, the 1.5 billion bounty, was revealed. Chapter 969, nice, I believe, was the chapter where we got the Roger laughed kind of reaction. Or maybe it was 968. I guess I can't remember them too well. But the point is, this was a really big chapter, and for good reason. Probably easily the most notable thing that happened in this chapter, and I don't have to explain this, I think you guys all know at this point, spoilers, but of course it was the scene with Kawamatsu, right? Yeah, the scene with Kawamatsu, where Kawamatsu is in the festival stage, and they notice that the entire festival stage is now essentially on fire. And he mentions that, well, we can't get any water to put out the fire because, we're in the sky. So he's, like, shouting to all the samurai and all of his comrades, we have to get out of here. We have to evacuate. There's no honor in burning to death. Kind of like lessening the impact of what was happening with Raizo. Like, Raizo's whole thing, of course, was just like, I will burn to death if it means avenging Odin and taking Fukurokuju down. And then, here's Kawamatsu saying that. But, yeah, so in this video, let's just analyze what Kawamatsu was saying to the samurai. Okay, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. Okay, so, let's talk about Luffy becoming the Chosen One! Oh my god, at long last, Luffy, you've lived up to your legacy! You have donned the mighty straw hat, and for that reason, you will be the next Joy Boy! Alright, so, I've said this before, I'm not a huge fan of the Chosen One trope. That's not to say that it can't be spun in a way that I do find interesting, and that's why I'm going to hold off judgment completely until, well, we see where Oda is going with this, okay? I would assume this is something Oda has planned for a while now. I don't know if he planned on this, like, way back at the beginning of One Piece, like this panel, although you gotta think about that sometimes. Like, I'm sure at the very beginning of One Piece, Oda had an idea, like, what the One Piece was going to be, and that image of him drawing that panel is probably already, like, seared in his mind, right? So who knows? This scene in the last chapter at the very end where Luffy's turning into goo and he begins to smile and everything, and yeah, that might have been a scene that Oda had at the very beginning of One Piece. Like, I can't wait to draw that finally, okay? It might have been. But anyway, Oda's a good writer, and he's been, writing and drawing One Piece for, like, literally over 2 decades at this point. So I'm gonna hold off and wait to see where he's going with this. But overall, I guess let's talk about some reactions here, okay? So the idea is, okay, what if Luffy turns out to be, like, the legitimate, like, possession vessel for JoyBoy, right? Like, if JoyBoy were to just take over Luffy's body, it's no longer Luffy at that point. And there is some credibility to this, I guess, because, well, for one thing, we had the chapter which concluded the fight between Kaido and Luffy. I'm gonna put Luffy in air quotes here. It said, the narrator came on, which we can assume the narrator is, in fact, Oda himself, unless Oda reveals that, like, no, it was actually Usopp. Usopp was the one after the battle, like, chronicling these things the whole time. But no, we're going to assume ostensibly it is, in fact, Oda that's the narrator. So when he says, the fight between King and Zoro is over and Zoro is the winner, we can take that to mean the fight is over and Zoro is the winner. So if we're going to go along, and maybe that's the reason Oda did it, because he did all these other fights with the Tobiropo and the All-Stars, and it's like, when that narrator came on and that title box appeared, and it was like, this is the winner, this is the loser, this is the outcome of the battle, we moved on and we just take that at face value, okay? So maybe Oda's like, yeah, I'm going to establish this for the Toby Roppo and All-Star fights, so then when we and the Big Mom fight as well, and then when we finally get to this battle between Kaido and Luffy, when that narrator box pops up and says Kaido won that battle, Kaido did in fact win that battle. That box did not appear when Kaido knocked Luffy off of Onigashima the first time, right? So it's like the battle was still ongoing. So people have been thinking is like, well, maybe the idea is, yes, Luffy did in fact lose that battle, but now we're not talking about Luffy anymore. Now we're talking about JoyBoy using Luffy's body as like a vessel for his reincarnation form or whatever, and now it's going to be a fight between Kaido and JoyBoy, which would be very interesting in and of itself, because now we have this whole situation where Kaido has been sort of acting like the gatekeeper for the next JoyBoy, and has sort of like tried to like, you know, want that title for himself, and maybe he realized he couldn't achieve it for any number of reasons, and so he's like, well, if I can't be the next JoyBoy and, you know, herald in this new era or whatever, then, you know, I'm gonna gatekeep, and the next one that has to, you know, wants to have that title has to get past me first, so to speak. And so he was really upset that Luffy didn't live up to that legacy, or rather he was about to live up to that legacy, and then the Cypher Pole Zero agent interfered. And that's the thing, it could be like, it doesn't matter that that Cypher Pole Zero agent interfered. It doesn't matter that Kaido slammed Luffy into the ground and he lost that fight. JoyBoy will awaken regardless of what would have happened at the outcome of that fight, okay? It could have been a situation where even if Luffy managed to land that hit on Kaido, that over Kong gun, what if it would have happened where Luffy did end up hitting him, the Cypher Pole agent did not interfere at all, and that attack was not strong enough to take down Kaido? I like to think it was set up like it sort of was going to be, but let's say it didn't, and Luffy hit Kaido with the over Kong gun, and Kaido is still there, and Luffy is kind of like still reeling, and right when Kaido gets back up, that's when Luffy would have activated this form anyway, okay? Well, I say activate, I don't really think it's like Luffy's will that's like activating this power. If it really is like the awakening of his fruit, it's happening just like no matter what like Luffy chooses to do. I mean, he's like unconscious at the moment, so it's like he's just awakening this power, okay? So the idea is like, okay, if this is actually JoyBoy coming back, and he's going to fight Kaido and defeat Kaido, which we could believe would happen, that'd be really cool to see Kaido, like, interact with this, like, mythological figure, essentially, that he's been, like, trying to live up to for decades now, and, like, actually interact with them. That would be interesting of itself. But it's like, does that take anything really away from Luffy? And there's two camps to this that I've seen. One of them is, like, we're kind of going with a sort of trope here, where it's like, okay, the main character has some other really strong force or power inside of them. Kurama for Naruto, the devil with Asta. There's a bunch of inner hollow for Ichigo. Like, there's all these different, like, anime tropes where it's like the main character is not as strong as they need to be to take down this main villain, and it's okay though because they have this really strong force inside of them that they usually cannot control, and in some cases don't even get along very well. Like, you know, Kurama and Naruto did not get along very well for the vast majority of Naruto, but eventually, you know, work together. So then you kind of get on the plot railroad where it's like, okay, let's say Luffy awakens to JoyBoy's power, and then it's like two beings inhabiting the same body, and then we have to deal with that kind of stuff. And like, that's been done before a lot of times in anime. Is there a way Oda could spin that to make it interesting? Sure, but it's like, do we want that for Luffy's character? Is that the kind of thing that Luffy's been established, been set up to be? I won't deny that, especially with Wano, I mean, it's been hinted at before Wano, but for Wano, Oda was really laying it on thick that JoyBoy is coming back in some form, whether it be in the literal sense of, like, his spirit is taking over someone's body, or in just the idea of, like, someone bearing the title of JoyBoy. With the idea of Zunisha being there, and Zunisha announcing to Momonosuke, like, I can hear these drums of liberation, you know, like, I can sense it, as if implying that, like, through the voice of all things, just like how Momonosuke could sense that Luffy's voice has disappeared, Law sensed it as well, which, by the way, that's another thing that we kind of missed in that chapter. Can Law hear the voices of all things now, or was that just ordinary observation hockey? Because I kind of feel like there might be something there. Now, if Law could hear the voices of all things, he has the will of D as well. That's not really that weird to me. It's just that kind of was something that was thrown in there. I think a lot of people missed it or like lost over it, like because we have other stuff to focus on. But yeah, that's something to just bring up. But no, it's like, okay, so if it's like every living thing has its own voice, and so Luffy's voice was silenced, but at the same time Luffy's voice was silenced, Joy Boy's voice began anew. And then, not Momonosuke, Zunisha recognized that voice and immediately told Momonosuke of the arrival of Joy Boy, okay? So, you know, if this is a thing where Joy Boy is taking over Luffy's body, is this going to be an ongoing event? Is this going to be a thing where it's like, okay, when Luffy's fighting, he has like another voice in his head or something giving him advice? We already have that with Usopp and Sage King. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm just like, even though it was mentioned that Luffy does have the connection to Joy Boy and stuff, I would still much rather it just be a title. Or rather, one way that I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it is the person that awakens to this fruit. Whether or not you want to call it the Gamu Gamu no Mi, I'm pretty sure it's not the Gamu Gamu no Mi at this point, but just for simplicity's sake, it's the Gamu Gamu no Mi, because that's what we've been calling it for the last 20 plus years. Whoever awakens to this fruit becomes Joy Boy. And it could be a situation where the original Joy Boy, during the Void Century, had this fruit, ate the fruit, awakened to the fruit, and Zunisha is just recognizing the power, the vibe, so to speak, coming off of the fruit, coming off of Luffy. And Zunisha recognizes that as the same power that the original Joy Boy had, the Joy Boy that was the Nakama of Zunisha, and that's where it comes from. It's sort of like anybody that has the same power as someone previous. Like, for example, Sabo, to a lot of people, probably reminds a lot of others as Ace, because he has the Mera Mera no Mi, right? So it might be a similar situation there, where Zunisha, maybe even in the next chapter, and we have to wait 2 weeks now, thank you, Oda, but that's how it goes. In fact, I think the way the schedule is going, we have to wait 2 weeks, another chapter, chapter 1044, and then after that, I think that Shonen Jump's on a normal break anyway, so we have like 2 weeks, one chapter, and then another 2-week break for the next one. So it's going to be a while now. We're only going to get one One Piece chapter in the next month, I think, so, you know, prepare yourselves for that. But it might be a thing where in the next chapter, Zunisha could be like, ah, yes, I hear the drums of liberation. Joy Boy has returned. Wait a second. It's strange. The voice is a little different from what I remember. The tempo of the drum beat is slightly different from what it used to be. It's definitely reminiscent of Joy Boy, but it's not the one that I remember exactly. Could be something like that, and that's what I would prefer. You know, it's just like, okay, Luffy has awakened to his Devil Fruit power, so therefore he is now the title of Joy Boy, and he bears similarities to Joy Boy, but it is still Luffy. I really kind of want to have a scene where, like at the end of Bleach, when Ichigo goes into his hollow form, and Orihime's there, and she's like really nervous, like, is this crazy chaos, you know, raging Ichigo, or is this normal Ichigo? And she's like, Ichigo, is that you? And it's like a moment of like, oh, who is it? And then it's like Ichigo just turns around, he's like, it's me, it's all cool, you know, and it's like, oh, thank God, you know, like that kind of situation. So I kind of want something like that where Luffy awakens, both literally and metaphorically. Like, he awakens because he's been knocked out by Kaido. Like, he gets back up, but he's also awakened to his power. And then he's like, oh, and then, like, he jumps down to the festival stage where Kaido is. Like Oda could really paint this in a weird way, where we could have Luffy getting up on the roof, and we don't really get to see his eyes or anything like that. Like, maybe his eyes are, like, shadowed or something. And all we see is the grin, because we saw that in the last chapter where he's grinning. Also, I assume that his hat was also turning into the goo, but I think when he was knocked out by Kaido, his hat was, like, on his back, like, with the string around his neck and stuff. So I don't think his hat was turning into that goo substance, but it might have been. Okay, it doesn't matter. Because an awakening would affect things around you. Either way, I guess it makes sense. But it could be a thing where Luffy gets up, and all we see is the lower part of his face, like we saw in the end of the last chapter, and he's grinning, and then he just kind of like gets up, looks around, sees Kaido's not there, and then like maybe like senses Kaido below, and then he just jumps down. So like as we're reading the chapter, it's like, wait, who is it? Is it Luffy? Is it JoyBoy? Ah! And then Luffy like lands in the middle of the festival hall right as Kaido has like announced with his big booming voice, like, Straw Hat Luffy is dead. I will now rule this island. Woro, woro, woro. And then Chopper and Nami and everybody is just like, that's not true. And then boom, Luffy just lands. And it's like the dust settles. And then maybe we have a scene where Nami sort of like very sheepishly kind of gets up and like the aura is coming off of Luffy. Even if you can't like sense observation hockey, you can't sense hockey or whatever, you still feel like the vibe is different. And so Nami at first is like, Luffy, wait, are you Luffy? And then the scene where Luffy just kind of maybe turns and just is like, yeah, it's me, Nami. Hi, how are you doing? And then he's like laughing with a big grin on his face, but his body is still like melting essentially. And so it's like reassurance of like, okay, you're still Luffy. You're still the same old Luffy. It's not like you have a different personality now. And Luffy's like really confused. It's like, what's going on with this? And honestly, like we could have a moment where Zunisha, because Luffy can hear Zunisha, but cannot communicate with it, but he could still communicate with Momo. So there might be a situation where like Zunisha is explaining the power to Momo, and then Momo is relaying it to Luffy, or Zunisha just with its big booming elephant voice could just be like, JoyBoy, you have returned! Use your mighty power! And then Luffy's like, what? What's that? I don't, huh? Just like, what power? I'm like melting here. Like, Luffy's very confused. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like covered in slime. My skin is melting. I don't know what this is. But maybe like Law and Kid would be there. Maybe they could be like, Straw Hat, yeah, you have awakened. And he's like, oh, like that thing Doflamingo and Katakuri did. Oh my god! All right, I don't know. Maybe one or two of you just realized what I arrived at there. Okay, all right. I'm just gonna say it. What if Luffy has no idea what an awakening is? Or like, well, he knows what an awakening is, but he doesn't know what his awakening is or all the abilities he can do with it or whatever. So upon hearing that he has awakened, he's like, oh, I'm awakened. Like Katakuri. And so then he tries to use one of Katakuri's abilities, because that's the only basis he has. I mean, he has Doflamingos, but Luffy does not like Doflamingo. Luffy does not respect Doflamingo. But he fought Katakuri, and it's like Katakuri and him sort of had like an understanding, and the mochi fruit was very similar to his fruit. So what if it's like, oh, I'm awakened, am I? That means I can use awakened abilities. I'm gonna try to turn into a donut. And what if he does? He could. That's like so funny. That would be like, and then like everybody is like Zunisha's like, you know, JoyBoy, use your technique that you used 800 years ago to defeat Kaido once and for all. And Luffy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Giant donut! And Zunisha just like, you just see the dots over Zunisha like, not what I was thinking about, but I guess if it works, you know, screw Usopp hitting Kaido with the banana, have Luffy just turn into a giant donut and hit him with that. But no, that's silly, but you can kind of see the logic there, right? If Luffy is still in control and he doesn't have a voice inside of his head, like the spectral image of JoyBoy appears behind him or something, like a Jedi ghost or something, and it's just like, Luffy, you must guide your technique, you know, raise your hand, sort of like the father-son Kamehameha or something. Like, raise your hand, Luffy, and picture a stream of rubber. Picture a condom, Luffy, and wrap Kaido around it. That is how you will win this fight. Like, you know, like, I don't want that. I just don't. Of having, like, you know, the past image of JoyBoy appearing and, like, giving advice to Luffy or, you know, taking his body over, like, the inner hollow with Ichigo and everything. I'd really rather not have that happen in One Piece. But like I said, if Oda can spin it in a way that's new and different and makes sense, that's cool. I saw a lot of people talking about how it's not so much about Luffy being a chosen one, but it's more about Luffy, you know, all the members of the Will of D are candidates here to be the next JoyBoy. And maybe everybody that's eaten this fruit throughout the centuries were also candidates, but nobody ever was up to it. And there might have been people that were maybe close, but they didn't quite get there. Like maybe somebody that ate this fruit 100 years ago, 300 years ago, 500 years ago. You know, the world government's been in control for a long time in One Piece. There could have been a bunch of people that ate this fruit, and they might have not all have been idiots. Maybe some of them were kind of like Luffy, and they were really close, but Luffy was the first one. Or rather, maybe Luffy was the first one with the Will of D to eat this fruit. And so everything kind of just aligns together. So Luffy kind of like is the chosen one, but it's not like he was spoken about in prophecy, like, you know, this boy, Monkey D. Luffy, will be born 800 years from now, and he will be the one to achieve this great power. It wasn't like that specific. It was just more vague of like, at some point, someone with the Will of D will eat this devil fruit, and they will also awaken it. So it's like they have to have the Will of D, they have to eat this fruit, which is rare in and of itself, to try to find one devil fruit in the entire world, and they have to awaken the power, which is also very difficult, which is rare in and of itself there. So it's like if they check all these boxes, and if they meet all the criteria, then they become the chosen one because of their, not because of just from birth, but because of their hard work, because of their determination, a little bit of luck thrown in there too, but not as much as you would think. And then, boom, you become the chosen one. Because of your own, like if Luffy would have decided just to stay on Dawn Island and maybe eat the fruit but never train with it, he wouldn't have been the chosen one. If Luffy never ate the fruit at all, he wouldn't be the chosen one. But it's just through all of his actions, through this story, which led him to be the chosen one. I could be okay with that. That would be okay. I just don't want the prophecy to be too specific, I guess, if that makes sense. But anyway, that's this video. That was like over 20 minutes. Did I even scratch the surface of what all of I wanted to discuss? I don't even know. But there's some other avenues to take with this. We didn't even talk about, like, I guess I talked a little bit about the powers that Luffy might achieve in this form, but I didn't go into full detail of that, so that'll be another video. But yeah, that's just like extra reaction from the chapter. Let me know what you think about that down below with the Chosen One ideas and everything like that, different angles to take this, and if Luffy's going to have his own personality or if it's going to be JoyBoy when he does actually wake up. Let me know about that. But anyway, let's go on to Frog Facts. We got a fun one today. Hit the intro.
Tekking.
All right, so usually when I do animal facts with a large group of like species, like we did ant facts and stuff, and bat facts as well, something I like to do is find the smallest member of that species and then the largest member of that species for an animal fact, okay? So we're going to be talking about the smallest frog species ever discovered. There could always be an even smaller one out there in the world, but this is, as of right now, 2022, the smallest frog species in the world, and not only that, is also the smallest vertebrae in the entire world, okay? So this is a frog from Papua New Guinea, and it is called Paedophren ameuensis. I hope I pronounced that right. Paedophren ameuensis. It's one of those frogs that don't have a really cool nickname. I guess you could just call him the tiny frog. But he doesn't have like a cute nickname like Wallace's gliding frog or Wallace's tree frog or whatever that was called. No, it's just the taxonomical name in Latin or whatever. Okay, so it is the smallest known vertebrate, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I am not a biologist, but when you're talking about vertebrates, they are not every animal that has a spine, right? Like a spine like us, because vertebrates are like the different sections of your spinal cord, right? I'm not wrong there, right? So we got mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles are all vertebrates, and they are vertebrates because they have a spine that has vertebrae. Correct? Not correct? Let me know if you're a biologist. There are over 69,000 current species of animals that are classified as vertebrates, and out of all of them, this little guy right here is the smallest out of all of them. It is only 7.7 millimeters large, and the smallest frog that existed before that was 7.9 millimeters. So this is 0.2 millimeters smaller than the former smallest frog. To give you an idea of the size, here's a picture of this guy on a U.S. dime. For those of you that don't live in the U.S. or have never seen one, this is the size of a U.S. dime. Just to give you like comparison to my head, it's not very big. It's the smallest coin we have, and on the back here, I drew a little dot to kind of represent the size roughly of this frog on the back of the dime here in this like zoomed in image. So yeah, that gives you an idea of how big the frog is. Not very big at all. It has no tadpole stage for this reason. The children are born basically with the same anatomy as the adults, just a little bit smaller than even 7.7 millimeters, and they are called hoppers, and so they're just kind of like a scaled down structure, and then they grow just slightly to adult stage. They have a jump that is 30 times larger than the length of their body, which, considering this is the size here, this little dot's like 30 times this. I mean, it's whatever, but still pretty impressive given like relative, compared to its body length. It has a very high pitched call, very reminiscent of an insect call, and it's at over 8,000 to 9,000 hertz. And I'm not going to play it here because it's very annoying, but you can look up YouTube, just type in like 9,000 hertz pitch or whatever, and then you can hear it. It is distinguishable with the human ears, but it's a very annoying kind of like buzzing sound or like whining sound in your ear. Okay, so just, I would not wear headphones, keep the sound down, but that's like the general sound that this thing generates. It's a very, very high-pitched noise. But yeah, so that's this guy right there, and he lives in Papua New Guinea, and he's not endangered or anything like that. Apparently they're all over the place in Papua New Guinea. So you can head over there for vacation, I guess, and check them out. Apparently they're all over the place. Just try not to step on them. But that's them. So that's the smallest frog species and the smallest vertebrate. So I guess we learned something today, ladies and gentlemen. Next time I'll be talking about the largest frog species, which I actually have not looked at yet. So I'll have to check that out. But thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Later, everyone.